Hello there, a very good evening and welcome to another edition of Primetime News on TV1. I'm Charlene Benedict for the Newsfirst team.
And I'm Naveksha Gunasekar, and here are your headlines for tonight.
Presidential election will be held on time. A statement from the President's Media Division. Gammanpilla's expose on attempts to postpone elections by abolishing the executive presidency.
In fact, this proposal is a sugar-coated poison.
Senegal in crisis after elections were postponed. Cabinet approved further amendments to the Online Safety Act. Preparations to expedite the Broadcasting Regulatory Commission Act. No solution. Health trade unions continue strike action.
Now in some news just in, a fire that broke out at the Devon Fall Reserve continues to spread across the region. Now this fire broke out in Hatton Kotagala Devon Fall Reserve this afternoon. The fire broke out in the Devon Reserve above the Kutmale River, which flows close to the Devon Falls. For more visuals, you can log on to our award-winning website www.newsfirst.ok. You can also access these footage on our social media platforms. Now, starting off with your top stories for tonight, the President's Media Division said that the presidential election will be held within the mandated period and according to the current timeline. The statement from the PMD comes amidst a backdrop where debates continue regarding the upcoming elections.
Will the next election be a presidential election, a general election, or a referendum? These questions continue to be the subject of much debate in Sri Lanka. Issuing a statement today, the President's Media Division said that the presidential election will be held within the mandated period. The statement goes on to note that according to the current timeline, the general election is scheduled to be held next year. President's Media Division stressed that the funds required to hold the election will be provided for in the budget for the year 2025 and that the Election Commission is vested with the responsibility of holding the election. The statement by the President's Media Division added that the state will work with the Election Commission as and when required.
Last week, the President informed the Cabinet that 10 billion rupees have been allocated in the budget to hold the presidential and general elections this year. The President had also informed the Cabinet that the expenses of the presidential and general elections should be managed within these provisions. The President's Media Division announced today that the presidential election will be held within the mandated period and the general election will be held next year and financial provisions will be provided in the 2025 budget. Questions were raised regarding this at the Cabinet media briefing held today.
ජනාධිපතිවරණයක් හෝ මහ මැතිවරණයක් බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්න පුළුවන්ද? එහෙම පැවැත්වෙනවා නම් ප්‍රථමයෙන්ම මුලින්ම පැවැත්වෙන්නේ ජනාධිපතිවරණයද මහ මැතිවරණයද?
ඒක තීරණය කරන්නේ මැති.
It is decided by the Elections Commissioner. The President has allocated 10 billion rupees for this year to hold an election.
තුමා මේ වර්ෂයට වෙන් කරලා තියෙනවා.
බිලියන 10 ප්‍රමාණවද ඇමතුමා?
ඒ මැතිවරණ කොමසාරිස්තුමයි මුදල් අමාත්‍යාංශයයි සාකච්ඡා කළා විසඳගන්න.
ඊට අමතරව ඇමතුමා ජනාධිපති ක්‍රමය වෙනස් කිරීම සම්බන්ධයෙන් ජනමත විචාරණයකට යාමේ සාකච්ඡාවක් තියෙනවද?
එහෙම කිසිම සාකච්ඡාවක් තිබුණේ නැහැ.
However, parliamentarian Udaya Gammanpilla says that there is an attempt to postpone elections.
NGOs have brought back the proposal to abolish the executive presidency with the blessing of the government. In fact, this proposal was brought earlier. The leader of the opposition said that if there is a provision to dissolve the parliament soon after abolishing the executive presidency, they are ready to support the amendment. Therefore, government has been cautious to accommodate the request of the main opposition. So, as an interim or transitional provision of the constitutional amendment. Several political parties, including the SLFP, has already expressed their support to this proposal and the government expects other parties such as SJB, JVP and the TNA would support this proposal because that's their stated policy. In fact, this proposal is a sugar-coated poison. The government has planned to postpone the presidential election indefinitely in the guise of abolishing the executive presidency. In other words, a presidential election will face the same fate of local authority election and the provincial council election. The Supreme Court has already determined that any proposal to any constitutional amendment to abolish the executive presidency shall be approved by the people at a referendum in addition to approval of the parliament with the 2/3 majority. Therefore, after passing the constitutional amendment by parliament with the 2/3 majority, the speaker has to inform that to the president. Then president will have to place this before the people for their approval at a referendum. The steps to be taken after the approval by the people is clearly mentioned in Article 80 of the Constitution. It says, President cannot certify approval of the bill by the people at a referendum if there is a petition challenging the validity of the referendum before the Supreme Court. There will be no abolition of executive presidency as long as there is a pending case before the Supreme Court. Some may argue that present constitution is still valid as long as constitutional amendment is signed and made it operational. Therefore, executive presidency is operational and presidential election can be held. In this backdrop, we urge all opposition parties to not to fall into this trap set by the government.
Parliamentarian Professor Charitha Herath elaborated his reading on this.
If a presidential election is not held before the 17th of October this year, the presidency of Ranil Wickremesinghe will end on that day. It is a constitutional crisis. According to the constitution, there can be no time without a president in the country. The country ran without the parliament for about 6 months. It can go like that, but this country cannot run for a single day without a president, according to the constitution. It is an absurd story saying that they don't have money to hold elections. If money is allocated for one election, it should be the presidential election as per the constitution. They can't delay the presidential election this year, but they can delay the general election. J.R. Jayawardena wanted to postpone the general election, but he had the presidential election. He can also hold a referendum because if a referendum can be held, there is no reason for the election to be postponed. One of the two elections should be held.
While discussions continue surrounding the postponement of elections and abolition of executive presidency, the Online Safety Act also continues to be the subject of much controversy.
Now, when the Online Safety Act was passed in Parliament, there were serious allegations levelled regarding the provisions in the Act and also the procedure in which the Act was passed.
Now, a new proposal has been presented to amend the Online Safety Act that was passed just 13 days ago.
After the Online Safety Bill was passed into law in Parliament on the 1st of February and became the Online Safety Act, there were serious allegations levelled against the passage of the Act. Chief among them was the fact that the Act did not include 9 amendments that were proposed by the Supreme Court to enable the Act to be passed by a simple majority in Parliament. However, despite the allegations when the bill was signed by the Speaker and was made an Act, the Speaker himself said that the passed bill had been vetted by the Attorney General and assured that the bill was in line with the determination of the Supreme Court. However, in a letter to the Speaker, the Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka states that 5 amendments that were proposed by the Supreme Court had not been included during the committee stage debates on the bill. The Human Rights Commission states that without the amendments, those provisions could have only been passed in Parliament with a 2/3 majority. The Attorney General had written back to the Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka and assured the Commission that the procedure followed in the passage of the Act is constitutional. Asian Internet Coalition, including global giants such as Google, Meta and Amazon, had also made proposals on how the online safety bill should have been amended. However, although the act was passed and the Speaker had also endorsed the act, the Online Safety Commission has not been established, neither have any regulations been promulgated under the act. A proposal was presented to the Cabinet yesterday to amend the Online Safety Act.
42 petitions were filed in the Supreme Court. During the time the petitions were taken up in the Supreme Court, the Asian Internet Coalition and civil organizations had presented many views and proposals on this bill. The minister said that he had come to an agreement with these organizations regarding the amendments that will be made to the bill. However, when the bill was being passed, since we had received the determination of the Supreme Court, the Attorney General had advised that further amendments cannot be included during the committee state. The Attorney General said that if there are further amendments, they must be presented to the Cabinet and then included as another amendment. If there is anyone who wants to challenge these amendments in the Supreme Court, time needs to be given for that as well. A Cabinet paper was presented to get these amendments passed in Parliament. Cabinet granted approval for this.
සම්මත කරගන්න අනුමැතිය ගන්න කැබිනට් පත්‍රිකාවක් ඉදිරිපත් වුණා. ඒට කැබිනට් අනුමැතිය ලබා දුන්නා.
online safety bill එකේ මොන වගේ changes ද කරන්න කියලා පොඩ්ඩක් අපිට හැඳින්වීමක් කරන්න පුළුවන්.
මේ ඒකේ විශාල ප්‍රමාණයක්.
There were many amendments presented, about 20 amendments I believe. This bill will be presented to Parliament and it will be published via a gazette and then all of you will be able to see the amendments.
ලට නිල වශයෙන්ම ලබා ගන්න පුළුවන්කම ඇති වෙනවා.
මේ පනත ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙන දිනේ කවද? ඒ කියන්නේ මේක දැන් ක්‍රියාත්මක කරනවද එහෙම නැත්නම් ක්‍රියාත්මක කිරීම අත්හිටවනවද මේ අලුත් සංශෝධන ගෙනල්ලා ඒක නැවත අලුත් කරන තුරු?
ඒ නෛතික තත්ත්ව
I have very little knowledge about the legal standing on this matter. Will inform the Minister of Justice and Prison Affairs President's Council, Vijayadasa Rajapaksa, to provide a clarification regarding this matter.
සමාතට දැනුම් දෙන්න.
Several parties reiterated that the Online Safety Act should be withdrawn.
If you say that there are changes to this bill, if the Commission was not appointed to pass this bill, it is not an amendment that is required. What is required is a bill that should repeal it. If the bill is not drafted, we will personally draft a bill and send it along with an MP to the Parliament. What should be asked is what is the process of submitting this bill to the Parliament. There is an opposition to this in society. When this is being questioned in the court, the Attorney General lies saying that there will be amendments to the bill. They have passed this bill without even considering the amendments proposed by the Supreme Court for their political benefits. This bill of suppression is being passed to stop the rise of the general public against the government. The minister who claimed that he will pass this bill is now at the cabinet, claiming that this bill needs to be amended. The lack of expert opinion considered to pass this bill is now their excuse to amend this bill. This is why we say that this is the work of a dog done by a donkey. The minister who brought this bill in arrogance without any expert opinion is now in struggle.
විශේෂඥ මත කිසි දෙයක් ගේන්නේ නැතුව තමන්ගේ උද්දච්චකම තමන් පොරවීමේ න්‍යායෙන් මේ පනත ගෙනල්ලා අද අපේ වචනෙන් කියනවා නම් ඇමතිවරයා කිච වෙලා ඉන්නවා.
State Ministry of Mass Media Shanta Bandara says a Broadcasting Regulatory Commission Act and a National Media Policy will be introduced.
We always request media institutions and their heads that there is no issue with publicizing accurate information. A great duty must be fulfilled at the newsroom where the news is being aired. This has become irregular in our country. The Broadcasting Regulatory Commission Act and the Online Safety Act are being introduced for this purpose. It is the same reason we are preparing a national media policy.
Following the controversial postponement of the Senegal presidential election, authorities have enacted a nationwide mobile internet blackout. This move, coinciding with the banning of a major opposition demonstration, further restricts public expression in a nation previously considered one of West Africa's most stable democracies.
Senegal's government cut access to mobile internet services for a second time in as many weeks in a widening crackdown on dissent after the authorities postponed presidential elections scheduled for this month. The country's communication ministry said the step was taken because, quote-unquote, hate and subversive messages have been posted online that have spurred violent protests and deaths and significant damages. The announcement came after the authorities banned a demonstration that opposition supporters had planned to hold in the city in protest of the vote delay. The president said he postponed the election because of a dispute between Parliament and the Constitutional Council over potential candidates barred from running and over fears of a return to unrest seen in 2021 and 2023. Parliament backed the suspension of the election until December 15th, but only after security forces stormed the National Assembly and detained some opposition lawmakers. The vote paved the way for President Macky Sall, whose second term was due to expire in April, to remain in office until his successor is installed, likely in 2025.
Do you remember the data delete at the National Medicines Regulatory Authority? 5,623 documents of the National Medicines Regulatory Authority, or the NMRA, were deleted. If not for the social media and mass media that these new acts of government are now attempting to regulate, the data deletion would have not even been revealed.
Now, at the time, responsible official attempted to downplay the damage caused by the data deletion at the NMRA and try to sweep the incident under the carpet. However, as time passed, the true severity of this data deletion was revealed, and more details regarding this data deletion continue to be revealed.
On the 9th of July 2021, 5,623 documents of the NMRA on the government cloud were deleted. Making submission in court following investigations conducted into the matter, Deputy Solicitor General Dilip Apiris revealed that the data deletion was a result of a conspiracy to earn money by illegally importing medical equipment into the country. What was the motive behind this data deletion? Who did it and for whose needs was it done? Even today, these crucial details surrounding this data deletion have not been revealed. It was against such a backdrop that Attorney-at-Law Manoj Gamage, who is a member of the Director Board of the NMRA, makes the revelation regarding this. According to his letter of resignation addressed to the Minister of Health, Manoj Gamage says that details regarding the scams in the health sector and invaluable details regarding patents were not among the data that was deleted. In his letter, Manoj Gamage further states that this data deletion was the inception of the recent scams that shook the health sector of Sri Lanka.
The main reason for the import of substandard medicine and the medicine shortage that was experienced in the country was the deletion of data of the NMRA from the cloud. This cloud had details of blacklisted companies. This cloud had information on companies that imported fake medicine. This cloud had details of how companies had operated in the past, both good and bad. When the details of this government cloud were deleted, the NMRA did not have the details of these companies that import medicine.
Director of the NMRA, who resigned from his position, went on to note that steps are being taken to reinstate individuals who were responsible for this scam.
At the time when the company that was to manage the data of the NMRA on the government cloud was selected, the current chairman of the NMRA was a member of the director board that chose this company. They are conducting investigations at the NMRA to find out who is responsible for this. It is the current chairman, who was a member of the board of directors that selected this company, who is now conducting the internal investigation to find out who is responsible for this. He decides that the assistant director of the information technology division is not a person who should be held responsible for this. The former assistant director of the information technology division must be held responsible for this. Thereby, we informed the CID about this, and he was slapped with an overseas travel ban. And his probationary service in his position was also suspended. What was the first thing that the current chairman did after he came into office? He is submitting proposals to reinstate this person to the board of directors at the NMRA, who was investigated by the CID. Why is he attempting to reinstate the officials who were suspended for their alleged involvement in the NMRA data deletion?
යෝජනා ඉදිරිපත් කරනවා. ඒ දත්ත වංචාවට වගකිය යුතුයි කියලා ආයතනයෙන් අයින් කරපු අය ඇයි ගන්න උත්සාහ කරන්නේ?
Although we inquired from the chairman of the National Medicines Regulatory Authority, Specialist Dr. Ananda Vijay Vikrama, regarding these allegations, he did not respond to our
Newsfirst, with the people.
An extraordinary Gazette notification was issued today declaring all service, work or labour of any description whatsoever necessary or required to be done in connection with the maintenance and the reception, care, feeding and treatment of patients in hospitals, nursing homes, dispensaries and other similar institutions as essential services.
The trade union action launched by the 72 health unions demanding an allowance of 35,000 rupees will continue tomorrow as well. The health unions say the strike will continue since their requirements haven't been met.
Unions launched a strike at 6:30 am today demanding for a similar allowance to the allowance of 35,000 rupees given to doctors. Laboratory scientists, radiology technicians, pharmacists, public health inspectors, family health service officers were among the 72 health unions engaged in the strike. While the strike was not launched at children's hospitals, cancer hospitals, kidney hospitals and maternity hospitals, army officials were deployed at government hospitals as a measure to the strike launched. This is the situation around hospitals in the country.
හැමෝම අසරණයිද කවුරුත් ඔය කතා කරන්න යන්නේ නේ ලොකු අයදී මේව බලලා hina වෙනවා ඇති සමහරට. ඒගොල්ලෝ නා ලොකු රටවල වලට යයි ගිහිල්ලි වෙලා ඒගොල්ලෝ බෙහෙත් අරගෙන මේ මිනිසුන්ට මොකද්ද කරන්නේ?
මොකක් හරි දෙකකින් එකක් තියෙන්නේ කුරාටියක් දැනගන්න ඕනේ මෙයාලත් දැනගන්න. ගතියෙන් දෙන්නේ නැත්නම් මෙයාලා රෝගීන් විනාශ කරන්නේ මෙහෙම. තේරුම් නැති වෙනස්.
ආණ්ඩුවේ වැඩ නිසා මිනිස්සු දැඩි ලෙස අපහසුතාවයට පත් වෙලා තියෙනවා. මේ ප්‍රශ්න වලට ආණ්ඩුව කඩිනම් විසඳුමක් ගත යුතුයි. නැත්නම් අසරණ අහිංසක ජනතාව තමයි මේ අවස්ථාවේ දැල්ල පොඩි වෙන්නේ.
දහින් ගෙඩියනවා වගේ රැට කියනවා මේ ස්ට්‍රයික් කියලා. අපි මේ ලේතු අසරණ වෙන්නේ මේ අහිංසක ලේතු. හරිම අසාධාරණයි මේක. මොකද ඉස්පිරිතාලකට එන්නේ දුප්පත් අහිංසක මිනිස්සුනේ බෙහෙත් ටිකක් ගන්න. පුළුවන් සල්ලි තියෙන මිනිස්සු කවදාවත් මේ වගේ තැනකට එන්නේ නැහැ. ඉතින් ඒ වගේ මිනිස්සුන්ට කොච්චර අසාධාරණයක්ද? කවදාවත් මිනිස්සු ගැන හිතන ආණ්ඩුව නම් මේ රටේ ඇවිල්ලා නැහැ. අපි ඇත්තටම ලොකු කලකිරීමක ඉන්නේ.
We are ready to discuss and settle this issue at any time. We don't want to inconvenience patients in this country. The government will not be affected if the patients are inconvenienced. Although we launched this strike action depending on the response of the Ministry of Health and the President, we are ready to work at any given. We have no hope of continuing this strike action for longer than required.
කිසිදු අවස්ථාවක අපි අනවශ්‍ය විදිහට මේ වර්ධනය දිගට ඇදගෙන යාමේ බලාපොරොත්තුවක් නැහැ.
This is the stance of the Public Service United Nurses Union, who have not joined in the strike action.
It is better for us to continue to treat patients and demand for what we want than to sacrifice the patients and demand for what we want. If the Ministry of Health, the Minister and officials do not respond to these actions positively, we too will have to, even unwillingly, launch some form of trade union action. If we launch a trade union action, it will not be like the one that is ongoing, because we can mobilize the health service sector across the country. Minister of Health Ramesh Pathiran has requested the health trade unions to understand the current situation in the country and to end the strike. The Ministry of Finance had worked to present a system to provide solutions within the existing limited financial space, but I don't think the relevant trade unions had expressed an agreement about the financial amount that is the basis for providing the relevant solution. All of these professions are very valuable to us. Taking the difficulties faced by all the government employees, the President had proposed to increase their salaries by 10,000 rupees. A part of it is currently being given as well. The people of Sri Lanka are facing a lot of inconveniences through these measures. We respectfully request everyone to end the strike considering the present situation of the people in Sri Lanka.
මෙරට ජනතාව වෙනුවෙන් මේ සේව පවත්වාගෙන යන්නට උදව් කරන්නයි කියලා අපි තාම ගෞරවයෙන් සෑම කෙනෙක්ගෙන්ම ඉල්ලා සිටිනවා.
The Supreme Court reserved judgment in the appeal filed against the majority judgment delivered by the Court of Appeal, where the court dismissed the writ petition filed regarding the British citizenship of State Minister Diana Gavage.
The petition regarding the British citizenship of State Minister Diana Gamage was filed by social activist Oshula Lakmal Herath. The petition was taken up before Justices Gamini Amarasekara, Kumudini Wickramasinghe and Janak De Silva. President's counsel Savindra Fernando appeared for the respondent State Minister Diana Gamage and made submissions in court, while submissions were also made on behalf of the Attorney General. After hearing the submissions, the Supreme Court reserved their judgment and postponed the matter indefinitely.
According to the Department of Census and Statistics, 263,000 micro, small and medium-scale enterprises have been registered between 2018 and 2022. This was determined following an investigation conducted at institutional level to measure the impact of the economic crisis after the COVID-19 pandemic. According to the report, there were 1.3 million active micro, small and medium-scale businesses by the end of 2018. It was revealed that 79.8% of them were active by May 2023 when the survey was conducted. A majority of businesses, which is 33.4%, closed in 2020.
We looked into the reasons. 41% of the responses stated that the businesses closed due to the economic crisis. 45% stated that the businesses closed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. When we looked at what the institutions will do in future, 75% of micro businesses, 77% of small businesses and 73% of medium-scale businesses said they will continue to operate.
Justice for plantation workers. Old story, new story, same story.
According to the collective agreement of 2017, the daily basic salary of a plantation worker was 500 rupees. With additional allowances, the total became 730. But now, as it always has been, the workers do not receive a wage that's equal to their sweat. In 2021, the unions approached the Wages Board, but no agreement was reached because the Planters Association went to court against the order of the Wages Board. The workers still receive only a basic salary of 900 rupees plus 100 rupees as a cost of living allowance. But for many, even this 1,000 rupees is a pitiful mirage. And very few speak of the fact that a family cannot survive on 1,000 rupees a day.
When the entire country was closed during the COVID era, the plantation community continued to work. When the economic crisis grew severe, many workers began protests on the streets. But they never harmed the industry. Our tea exports continue to be the backbone of our economy and continue to bring in precious foreign exchange. They continue to live with the skyrocketing cost of living as they live with the weight of the tea basket on their backs. Now, the politicians are once again making promises.
I say that whether we have a collective agreement or not, the system needs to change. So we will bring in a formula. We are working towards this. The formula will measure inflation and adjust the workers' salaries accordingly.
Everyone started repeating the old story.
Those who did not want collective agreements are now clamoring for these agreements. I am confident that this time meaningful discussions can be held with the Planters Association. The collective agreement will come and the basic of 1,000 rupees will be included together with productivity and attendance incentives.
அதோட சேர்த்து ப்ரொடக்டிவிட்டியும் கிடைக்கும், அட்டெண்டன்ஸும் கிடைக்கும், பிஎஸ்எஸும் கிடைக்கும் அப்படின்னு நாங்க ஒரு யோசனை முன் வச்சிருக்கோம்.
பெருந்தோட்ட மக்களுடைய கூட்டொப்பந்தம் சம்பந்தம்
We need a new mechanism on how we develop collective agreements. It needs to be practical. If a collective agreement is presented to us that is suitable with the prevailing cost of living, I and Jeevan Thondaman are willing to sign it.
நானும் தம்பி ஜீவன் தொண்டமான் அவர்களும் கையொப்பமிடுவதற்கு ஆயத்தமாக இருக்கின்றோம்.
கூட்டு ஒப்பந்த முறைதான் சிறந்தது. காரணம் கூட்டு ஒப்பந்தத்தில்
Collective agreements are the best method because they go beyond basic wages. If collective agreements are abolished, it is the plantation workers who will need to face many unfair hardships. It is my opinion that in the prevailing situation, a worker's salary should be between 2,500 and 3,000 rupees.
நடைமுறைப்படி ஒரு தொழிலாளிக்கு 2500 அல்லது 3000 ரூபாய் கொடுத்தால் போதும் என்பதுதான் எங்களுடைய கருத்தாகும்.
We had collective agreements with the trade unions for many years. We have not taken a final decision on this. We have 20 companies and each needs to obtain the approval of their boards of directors. This process takes time. There are two sides to collective agreements. The workers have their requirements and the plantation companies have theirs. A final decision must be approved by the plantation companies.
Await episode 4 tomorrow.
Justice for plantation workers. Old story, new story, same story.
Sri Lanka is making waves in the world of conservation, earning the prestigious UN World Restoration Flagship Award for its remarkable efforts in rebuilding and restoring its vital mangrove ecosystems. This recognition cements the nation's position as a global leader in this crucial endeavor, offering valuable lessons and inspiration for countries around the world.
Sri Lanka won the UN World Restoration Flagship Award for its remarkable efforts in rebuilding and restoring its vital mangrove ecosystems. The award signifies the nation's effective use of the UN's principles for ecosystem restoration, while highlighting globally significant best practices and methodologies that can potentially serve as a framework for future success across the world. Sri Lanka is slated to receive the award at the United Nations Environmental Assembly, which will be held in Nairobi on the 27th of February.
In more news, a Colombo-bound Sri Lankan Airlines flight was forced to return to the Melbourne airport after takeoff. Initially, Sri Lankan Airlines issued a statement stating that the flight was forced to return due to a technical issue. However, Newsfirst spoke to a spokesperson of Sri Lankan Airlines for a further clarification.
Spokesperson for Sri Lankan Airlines, Deepal Pereira, told Newsfirst that Sri Lankan Airlines flight was forced to return to the Melbourne airport after takeoff after smoke from a generator of one of the AC units of the plane had filled the cabin. Earlier, Sri Lankan Airlines said in a statement, quote, "The Sri Lankan Airlines UL 605 Airbus A330 from Melbourne to Colombo made a safe return back to the Melbourne airport shortly after taking off at 6:16 p.m. Melbourne time yesterday due to a technical issue," unquote. He said following a proper investigation regarding the emergency landing, it was determined that smoke from the generator of the AC unit had caused smoke to fill up in the cabin, adding that accommodation was provided for all passengers on board. There were 202 passengers and 15 crew members on board the plane.
The iconic ship Rainbow Warrior arrived in Sri Lanka today. This marked the launch of the South Asia Regional Office of Greenpeace in Colombo. This launch set the stage for an inspiring journey focused on collective action, demanding accountability and resilience in the South Asian region.
Greenpeace launched its South Asia Regional Office in Colombo with the arrival of the iconic ship Rainbow Warrior, marking the beginning of the highly anticipated People for Climate Greenpeace Indian Ocean Ship Tour 2024.
Nowadays, all of you hear about climate change, what a big issue it is, how it's going to affect every country in this world, every individual in this world. But Greenpeace as a voice was active on this quite some decades ago, 30 to 40 years ago. One of the reasons Greenpeace is unique, that it is largely funded by about 3 million supporters all across the globe. And we do not depend upon a government or corporate funding for our work. Greenpeace believes in independence.
Greenpeace will continue its comprehensive program of events until the 18th of February, engaging with local communities, youth representatives, policymakers, stakeholders, social media influencers, media, educational institutions, donors, volunteers and supporters. Together, they intend to work towards collective efforts in addressing issues such as climate change, pollution, and the preservation of marine biodiversity from the perspective of the South Asian region.
Moving on in more local news, residents of Valigamam North are raising concerns over attempts by the government to reclaim the land on which they were resettled on. Now, they accuse that the government is attempting to reclaim this land for the development of the Jaffna International Airport. The Kurumba City Village Development Association says that people who were resettled on their ancestral land are now at risk of becoming internally displaced again. However, the governor of Jaffna says that the runway of the Palali airport needs to be expanded in order to upgrade the airport to the status of an international airport.
The land in Valigamam North, which was a high security zone for more than 3 decades, was released and people were resettled on their ancestral land in the area since 2015. On the 3rd of February last year, 108 acres of land in the Valigamam North high security zone was released and people were resettled on their ancestral lands there. Footage of people who were resettled in this area protesting against officials who came to the area to survey their lands yesterday are making the rounds on social media. Speaking at a media briefing today, the Kurumba City Village Development Society alleged that the government is attempting to reclaim about 500 acres of land in 5 villages including Mailiti North and Kotuvan West. The areas that have been released and where people have been resettled are now being surveyed for the purpose of the government reclaiming them. We have sent letters to all parliamentarians representing the Jaffna district, but neither the governor or the district or the government agent of the area have given us any time for a discussion. We cannot allow this to happen. 6,381 acres of land under the purview of Valigamam North Regional Secretariat was designated as a high security zone. However, 2,900 acres of land from that was released to the people during the time period from 2015 to 2019. 1,500 families have been resettled on the land that was released. It includes areas such as Kurumba City, Kotuvan West, South Mailai, Mailiti North. We inquired about these allegations from the government agent of Jaffna who attended an event held in Kilinochchi today. Officially, we have not been notified. If Palali airstrip is to be brought up to international standards, then it has to be extended. The specifics of how it will be extended has not been decided. Meanwhile, Ports and Civil Aviation Minister Nimal Siripala de Silva told Newsfirst that the process of purchasing land from private individuals for expansion of Jaffna International Airport has begun.
The preliminary auditions for Shakti Crown was held in the Jaffna district today. The Shakti Crown reality show is organized by Shakti TV and Shakti FM to take Sri Lankan voices to the international stage.
The preliminary voice auditions for the Shakti Crown reality show, created with the aim of setting the stage for those who strive to achieve greatness in the music industry, was held today at the Veerasingham Hall in Jaffna. Many people with a passion for music participated in today's voice test and showed their talent. Shakti Crown reality music show preliminary voice auditions will be held tomorrow at the Trincomalee City Council Hall.
திருத்தணி மலை மீது இது அன்பின் வேதம் நாளும் மோதும் காற்றே நாடி எங்கும் ஏதோ நாத வெள்ளமோடும் ராசாவே ஒன்ன நம்பி நாள் பொறு தலைவா உனக்காக காத்திருப்பேன்
Preliminary voice auditions for the Shakti Crown reality music show will be held in Batiklo, Kandy, Hatton, Matale, Deniyaya, Bandaravela and Ratmalana over the coming days.
Shakti Crown.
The world of geopolitics has been rocked by a bombshell statement from former US President Donald Trump threatening NATO allies. Trump sparked outrage among US allies by suggesting the United States might not protect fellow NATO members who are not spending enough on defense against a potential Russian invasion.
Former US President Donald Trump has said he would encourage Russia to attack any NATO member that fails to pay its bills as part of the Western military alliance. He said he had once told a leader he would not protect a nation behind on its payments and would quote-unquote encourage the aggressors to quote do whatever they want unquote. Members of the NATO commit to defend any nation in the bloc that gets attacked. The White House called the comments appalling and unhinged. NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg said any suggestion that allies will not defend each other undermines all of our security, putting soldiers from NATO countries at risk. Addressing crowds during the rally in South Carolina, Trump said he had made his comments about Russia during a meeting of leaders of NATO countries. Meanwhile, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said defense companies could count on his government ramping up military spending and that it would meet its commitment to spend 2% of GDP on NATO defense. Scholz was speaking after former US President Donald Trump sparked outrage among US allies by suggesting the United States might not protect fellow NATO members who are not spending enough on defense against a potential Russian invasion. Scholz said Germany and Europe's defense industry must switch towards mass production of arms as the war in Ukraine exposed how European manufacturers struggle to meet demand for ammunition.
In 2022, significant farmer protests erupted across Sri Lanka, with farmers expressing concern about declining yields and depreciation in their livelihoods. Many farmers are still struggling with debts accumulated and unstable prices for agricultural products, make it difficult for farmers to predict income and plan their investments.
Now, on the other hand, inflation has significantly impacted food prices, making essential items like vegetables, fruits and rice less affordable for many families. Farmers' protests in Sri Lanka haven't completely disappeared, but they're not at the same scale as they were in 2022.
However, in neighboring India, thousands of protesting farmers are marching from neighboring states to India's capital Delhi to seek assured prices for their crops.
Indian security forces fired tear gas to stop thousands of farmers demanding minimum crop prices from marching on the capital New Delhi after talks with the government failed. In 2020, farmers had camped at Delhi borders protesting against controversial agricultural reform. The year-long protest, in which dozens died, was called off after the government agreed to repeal the laws. Now the farmers have hit the streets again, saying their key demands still haven't been fulfilled. Police in Delhi have sealed the borders on 3 sides of the city in an attempt to avoid a repeat of 2020 when protesting farmers hunkered down for months, blocking national highways that connect the capital to its neighbouring states. The movement was seen as one of the biggest challenges to Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government. 2 rounds of talks between farm union leaders and federal ministers have failed to break the deadlock. Farmers are asking for assured floor prices, also known as minimum support price or MSP, which allows them to sell a majority of their produce at government-controlled wholesale markets or mandis. They are also demanding that the government fulfill its promise of doubling farmers' income. The march comes just months before the general elections in which Modi's Bharatiya Janata Party is seeking a 3rd term in power. Farmers form one of the most influential voting blocs in India, and experts say the government would try not to alienate them ahead of the polls.
That's a wrap of Primetime News on TV1 for tonight.
Thank you for watching.
Good night.